Lots of lots of developments overseas. We've had this attack on the Coptic Christians. We've got these questions about intelligence leaks and what's being done about that. Honored to be joined right now by Catherine Herridge, one of the chief investigative reporters for the Fox News Channel. Catherine, happy Friday.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. What's big news in your world today?
Well, I think if we could just take a step back to Manchester, I think one of the main headlines out of this story this week is that it is a network, and it extends into Libya, and the working theory of investigators is that the 22-year-old suspect was able to get that hands-on bomb-making training in Libya, which he was able to take home and then launch the attack. You know, Libya really became, after 2011, sort of a new safe haven for ISIS. When we started putting a lot of pressure on them in Iraq and Syria, they sent about a half dozen, I'll call them sort of middle managers or senior executives, whatever term you want to use, from their organization to set up shop there, sort of like a fallback, a plan B. If they lost their foothold in Iraq and Syria, they would be able to sort of relocate, if you will, and already have an operation going in Libya. So there's a pretty significant presence in ISIS, in Libya with ISIS, and then also Al-Qaeda, which morphed into this group Ansar al-Sharia. And I'm sure your listeners remember that this was one of the groups that was ultimately blamed for the 2012 Benghazi terrorist attack. So it's a real big web and rat's nest in Libya, and very unfortunate that it appears this young man got the training he needed to carry out that attack in Manchester.
It brings us back to the executive order being stayed again by a court this week, the injunction upheld. I believe Libya is one of the countries in that executive order, and one of the reasons that intelligence officials have expressed concerns is because there is really no formal government there right now, correct?
Well, these countries are countries where we can't pick up the phone if we have a legitimate question about somebody with any real ease and say, so what kind of information do you have about them? Have you encountered them before? Do they have a criminal past? That's sort of roadblock number one. With Libya in particular, in the last 2 years, it's developed a track record for being a base for training and for operations, and then individuals going outside of that country in order to execute these plots. Do you remember last Christmas, the attack in Germany? Remember at the Christmas fair?
Mm-hmm.
Remember with the truck? There's a lot of intelligence that individual had done training in Libya and returned from Libya before executing that attack. They've also trained people who've taken part at attacks targeting tourist sites in neighboring Tunisia. So this is the pattern that we're starting to see with that country. And again, there's really no government to deal with in Libya. The country is sort of like lots of little different provinces or states, if you will, with different clans or militias that have their own sort of legal system and system of justice. I don't know if you've been noticing in the reporting on Manchester how they're quoting these militia spokesmen down in Libya because there is no government really.
Right. Yeah, that's certainly something I know that the current administration's been keeping an eye on. Catherine, if I could turn your attention to the intelligence leaks for a minute. I was a reporter here in St. Louis and other markets around the country for 25 years. I understand the importance of anonymous sources sometimes that you can go to confirm information. Some of these leaks seem designed not just to hurt Trump anymore, but almost to hurt the United States, particularly this one on leaking the British intelligence. What do you think's going on here?
Well, I don't have firsthand knowledge of how that information got out into the public because I wasn't the recipient of that information, but it appears to me really to be a reflection of the speed, at which people expect detailed information about an event which is still unfolding. The difficulty, the sort of tragedy in this case, is that by releasing that name, that really set back the British investigation because they want to keep that name close so they can watch the people who are associated with that suspect.
Mm-hmm.
And once the name is out there, then people go to ground, they destroy evidence. You want to see who's in his network before 8 or 10 or 12 hours later, that information is finally already out. And then the photos of the bomb itself, every bomb, I think we've talked about it on your show, sort of has a signature, sort of a style in which it's made. So whatever they can learn about from the forensic review will help them understand who trained this 22-year-old to make the bomb. Is it someone that they're familiar with? Could it be someone who's been trained by the bomb maker in Yemen, which is the big Al-Qaeda affiliate there? And also, what DNA was on the bomb? Was it just the 22-year-old, or were there others involved? So once the name is out, this is the kind of case where you could really cost lives because people go to ground and you kind of lose them in that sort of golden window you have immediately after attack to try and pick up people because you have that element of surprise.
Well, we haven't seen it so far, but do you expect when the president returns we're going to see more of an effort to crack down on these leaks?
I think there may be a larger effort to try and crack down on the leaks. He's got his own problem with leaking about the transcripts still coming out of these White House meetings. I've never actually seen leaks quite like this, and I'm somewhat surprised at the degree to which people are releasing the information and not always asking themselves, like, what is the greater? I don't want to comment too much on my colleagues, but what's the news value and what's the greater purpose here? I recently, when we were doing all that reporting on ISIS and the execution of all the Americans, I was able to get a lot of very detailed information about the sort of the status of the American woman Kayla Mueller, who was eventually died in ISIS custody. But we were asked to wait, and we waited. I think it was 6 or 8 months because they were really still trying to see if they could get her out, and then it was confirmed that she was dead. So I can't speak for other people, but you have to always ask yourself if there's something larger going on here than just your deadline.
That's a great point. Catherine Herridge, thank you so much. Have a great Friday.
Yeah, you too.
All right, take care. I need to let her get on to her job there. Did you hear that honest reflection by a career investigative reporter at the network level in Washington, D.C.? I just want you to take note of that there are still people out there who have ethics, who receive information and debate whether or not whose best interest is it in that it gets released. That's a key question, ladies and gentlemen. What you have to ask yourself sometimes, what's in it for the New York Times to release information like that? Or the New York Post or the Washington Post or whoever's releasing it. Do they, in that particular case where they clearly weren't trying to hurt Donald Trump, they were trying to hurt America. But they got a lot of page clicks on it, didn't they?
Waiting to see is where